So again, just to kind of keep going with, the manufacturing side of things, with the turning, with additive, with subtractive, with nesting capabilities, also comes the inspection features as well. So you can use Fusion 360 to basically, if you have probes on your machine, you can use it to inspect your parts. You can also use it while it's in the machine prior to using it outside, prior to inspecting it outside as well. You can also use your probe to basically set up your work offsets. So make all this a more automated system. That way you don't have to have somebody throw a block in there every single time in case you're swapping from part to part, have to re-probe anything. You can have all that automated. That's the really nice thing about the inspection part of it. We can also kind of go a little bit further and use inspection features such as part alignment that you get with Fusion 360 to help you kind of reduce the amount of time that you need to take to basically dial, your parts in, simply by using concepts like CAD and geometric positioning studies and overlaying them on top of each other. We can have Fusion 360 do the work for us and post out our toolpaths with automatic tool with part alignment and part orientation. So these are some of the more advanced features that Fusion 360 can also do. Fusion 360, again, like I said earlier, does a lot of fabrication, meaning nesting and stuff like that, and can touch on a lot of 3D printing as well for quick prototyping parts. So let's just say that you wanted to create a part that you wasn't ready for batch production, and it was just mostly for testing. You can draw these designs and even use things like generative design to draw these really complex, very organic type of structures on Fusion 360. And then if you didn't want to machine them and you just wanted to print them out on your 3D printer, be it plastic, metal, Fusion 360 also has the capabilities to do that as well, right? So what I'm going to quickly do here is I'm just going to jump into Fusion 360 into our software. And let's just take let's just take a look at a couple of different things that how we can integrate Fusion 360 into our typical kind of an overview of what it does. So I'm just going to go ahead and share Fusion 360 here. Awesome. So as you guys can see, I just have a simple little headlight mold model in here. I do have a couple of different parts. So really what we want to understand is, like I was saying earlier, you can use all these different workspaces that are available on Fusion, which is our design, generative design, simulation, manufacture, and drawing. And you'll start to understand that, if you bring your CAD and CAM software all into one place, very easily and very quickly, you can just start, creating and designing a lot of your parts, even for in-shop manufacturing, right? I want to make sure that you guys understood about the file management system. Everything is basically on the cloud, giving you the ability to move and transfer and have access to your files a lot faster. And everything's all in one place, right? Now, with the design, we have some really advanced features that you can use. For example, your extrusions, everything from basically 2D to 2D sketches all the way to 3D extrusions. I'm going to go ahead and just quickly give you an idea of how fast and simple it is, just to kind of get started on, hey, I would like, I have a part that I would like to draw. Let's just say we needed a quick little bracket, right? I'm just going to go ahead. I'm not going to worry about too much about dimensions here. And again, you can draw and use this as much as in different sort of styles. Some people have designed different workflow styles. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I just have a quick little part right here. Right. I'm also going to go ahead and say, hey, I'll just make a quick little L bracket like here and put a little. What I really like about this also is the fact that it's so customizable, and you can set up a lot of these parameters that you get on a lot of these dialog boxes as defaults, right? So the ability to have all that basically joined up and seeing that in 3D. So as you can see, very quickly, we can go from just an idea to a solid model, right? And so that way you don't have to bother. For example, let's just say you are on the shop floor, right? And your machinist or your manufacturing engineer is like, oh, I need to just make a simple, quick little jig or quick little fixture for this one particular part. I don't need to go and have schedule a meeting with a CAD designer who is probably already tied up, working on another project, to go ahead and create a model for me. I can quickly just go into the design workspace and just quickly draw something up that I would really like to do, right? And then the nice thing about it is everything is so well and seamlessly built and automated to the point where just by clicking edges and using all these sort of advanced tools, I can go ahead and create radiuses, chamfers, and any sort of little things that I want, right? And now let's just say, hey, I'm done with whatever part that I wanted to make. Just by a couple of simple clicks, I can say, hey, I would like to make this into a drawing now, right? So I can just say, hey, I want to create this drawing, say this is an L bracket that we're going to be using, and just letting that hit save. I'm going to go ahead and create it just from a quick template here. Let's say 11.5 and hit OK. So this is really where the magic of having Fusion 360 as one of those is a nice assistive software, so that because now, as you can see, very quickly, I can go ahead and just create a print, hit OK, scale this or do whatever I need to it, right? So just go and say 1:1, drop a quick couple of dimensions on it, give a couple more views of it, and have this printed out, ready to go, and you hand it over to another machinist who's probably not as busy. Say, hey, I just quickly need this bracket made up for a jig or a fixture or something, a weldment fixture. And within an hour, we were able to go from just a need to something in my hand that I could go and deliver to like my welder, my fabricator, so that he can use it as a fixture for one of his jigs. So that's kind of nice and easy where Fusion 360 comes into play in your workflow, right? The other thing I would like to point out is, like I said earlier, we want to make sure that these parts are they're going to work and they're going to be used to the best of its ability, right? So you quickly even doing a quick simulation just to make sure, hey, can it handle a certain load, right? So I can quickly create static analysis here, put up a quick load, say, hey, I would like to make sure that this particular area can handle this much of load, right? Just going to go ahead and give it a quick little course here, say okay, right? So very quickly and very easily, I can get these designs and these simulations and these loads. I'm just going to go ahead and say, hey, I want to do a structural load, let's say solve. And what I really like about this is before you're even ready to go and hit the pre-check or the solve, it's going to give you and say, hey, you need to, there's a couple of things that you actually have to go ahead and do before we can give you or run any sort of analysis on here. So right now it's saying I need more structural constraints, right? So we're going to go ahead and say, hey, I need a constraint set up here. Say structural constraint. Let's go ahead and fix this point here. Say that's where we're going to be bolting it to something. Everything looks good on the pre-check now. I'm going to go ahead and hit solve. Also, what's really nice about Fusion 360 is a lot of the simulation studies that you do on it, they can be done either on the cloud or they can be done locally, right? So if they're being done on the cloud, then you can free up a lot of your processor speed or whatever for your computer and have it to the point where you can have those running in the background, giving you the ability to just kind of work on other projects simultaneously, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and hit load here very quickly. And as you can see right now, it's just currently being solved locally. So while that's actually going on, and most of these studies can happen very quickly depending on the type of load that you put on it. So as you can see, by saying that, hey, where we plan on giving it about 100 newtons worth of load on here, you can immediately see everything as far as deformation is concerned, as far as where you have, and we can also adjust the scale to make sure that our safety factor is enough, right? So quickly and very easy, like I said, you can verify your parts, verify these designs, and just make sure that what you actually draw and you manufacture will work in the real world, right? Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run back into our presentation here. And let's kind of discuss more on, where is the workflow? Where can Fusion 360 be helpful to you, right? So I'm going to put a lot of you in this, kind of situation where, let's just say that you were machining quite a complex mold, or, quite a complex or organic part. And typically something like that, you would program, let's just say you're using PowerMill, right? You would use Fusion 360 in a situation where, hey, I want to get a lot of things roughed out, right? I have a big gantry mill, and I can basically lay out a bunch of pieces of stock on it, and I want to basically get everything roughed out. And when it gets to my more bottleneck machine, right? So meaning like a full 5-axis machine with like a UMC or DMG or something like that, you don't really want to tie up those bottleneck machines just for roughing and just for doing simpler things. You want to make sure that you're maximizing the efficiency of the machines that you can use for all their full 5-axis simultaneous toolpaths, right? So really where Fusion will shine then at this particular junction is have your stock and have your raw billets all set up, and use Fusion 360 to get a lot of the roughing and a lot of the pre-finishing done. And you can leave stock, and you can make sure you add proper locating features so that when your stock moves from machine to machine, everything will still be in place. So that's kind of what we did when we were working a lot in the molding department as far as machining our molds, right? We got a lot of things basically roughed out on different machines, and then they would move on to our more technically complex machines, let's just say for finishing purposes, right? So we can also think about it as far as making components, right? You don't need to tie up a lot of your other more advanced machines to do very quick 2-axis little parts. For example, let's just say studs or any sort of boss features or any sort of fixtures, really. You don't have to waste your time trying to get those done in your more complex machines. Have them all kind of pre-done in your regular tool room. If you have a tool room lathe just sitting in the corner, Fusion 360 can make sure all of these machines are given a purpose and you can use them a lot efficiently, right? And then we also kind of touched on the part verification. By doing all these simulations and doing kind of getting a lot of information heads up, in front of the machining process or in front of the manufacturing process, you can reduce a lot of waste, wasted time, wasted money, just making sure that the tool, your part is actually going to work for the reason it's being built, right? You've got to prove the functionality of it, right? Again, like I touched on earlier, inspection points would be another great place where Fusion 360 can kind of be in your workflow, where, for example, you just spent, you had a 14-15 hour runtime on a certain part, and you were just about to remove it from your machine. And we were in a situation where it was difficult to basically get these parts out of the machine and then put them back in to realign them, right? So a quick little inspection toolpath that uses the probe that's inside my machine at the end of all my machining to go around and just basically probe a couple of features. For example, a boss feature that's very important to the functionality of our part. Let's just say we went around it and we programmed everything around it, but we forgot to program the boss, right? And as simple and silly as that may seem, it does happen. So just giving that extra piece of insurance to go ahead and program a inspection feature to go ahead and make sure that the boss is actually machined before we take the part out can save you a ton of time and a ton of headache and trying to, oh my God, we missed the feature. I have to put this part back in just after I machined it, right? So that's kind of another situation where Fusion 360 can become a really cool tool, even just as an insurance policy, right? And then also I'd like to touch on the tool library and the crib management. And again, we're going to see a lot of this when I'm talking on Fusion 360 here after we swap over. So we can use Fusion as a software that Fusion's tool library system is pretty involved, and you can make sure that a lot of your machines tool libraries are up to date, right? So for example, if you had, let's just say 10 machines spread across your shop floor, and you want to make sure that everyone on the floor knows which tool is in the machine at that current time. Soon after your programmers are done programming, or they're programming the part at using Fusion 360, using things like online cloud libraries. Again, these libraries are accessible to everybody on your team, right? Just to make sure that everyone can access this library gives people the confidence that, hey, I know for sure that this tool actually is in this pocket in this machine because somebody just used it and they've updated their tool library. So now instead of me walking from one end of the shop floor to the other end of the shop floor just to have a 2-minute conversation with another programmer, I can make sure that I'm, using my time more efficiently and just using a lot of the tool library features and the online tool library management um, to help me with my program, right? And that being said, you can import, you can import holder geometry, you can create custom tool geometry, and you can even go a step ahead and add links to web browsers even, right? Or like landing page or where you would order your tools. And these can be done on the individual tool level. So that's what's really neat about it. So put yourself in a situation if you run a lathe, right? And we all know it's breaking bits as part of the machining process. Worn out bits are part of the machining process. So we're recurringly buying a lot of different bits all the time. It would be a headache to make, for example, if somebody who did our ordering, they left. It would be a headache to try to track down exactly, hey, where did he go and buy that bit? Where did he go and buy that specific tool? So now we can actually take all that guesswork and all that time wasted away and have all those links and those vendor information already in the tool in Fusion 360, and make this whole, even making the whole purchasing environment and process a lot more easier, right? So that, again, like a couple more things I wanted you to kind of understand and think about where Fusion 360 can come into play. So I'm going to hop over back onto Fusion here just to kind of discuss a lot of the things that we just talked about, right? So for example, I have a simple mold here. This is just part of a headlight packaging product. So as you can see, if I was to go into my manufacturing workspace, right? So this is actually all of the important details are found on this side of my part, right? So because this is all molding surfaces right here. In the back, this is just a, cavity. And what we typically do is we just rough this out, leaving no stock, because again, it doesn't matter. It's going to get bolted onto a mold plate, and everything on the inside is just cleared out for venting purposes and to make sure that the steam goes through, right? So things like this, for example, I don't need to tie up my, full 5-axis UMC machine just to go ahead and rough all this out. Now we can get into a situation where, for example, I can do a quick little set. I've gone ahead and just made a quick little setup here, as you can see, to rough things out. So consider it, it's Friday, it's 2 o'clock, you're about to probably head out the door, right? Your supervisor tells you, hey, we need to get this roughened, because that way when we come in Monday morning, we can start loading up the other machine and get everything started, on the finishing process. So now, without having to worry about sitting there and swapping a bunch of different billets of stock into your machine, we can go ahead and just create a quick little roughing strategy, right? I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I want to create this out of the stock. Go ahead and give it a box form here. Say, okay, right? Next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and quickly do an adaptive clearing, or even just a pocket clearing if I wanted to. Let's go ahead and do that, because it might take a lot less time to kind of program that. Say, hey, basically I want to get everything inside this cavity, roughed out. Go ahead and do a couple of quick parameter changes in here. Say set up my maximum roughing step down. Do I need to leave any stock? I don't really want to leave any stock. Turn my smoothing on so it's a lot more easier on my machine. Right? I'm going to hit OK and done. So now really what we're doing is instead of waiting around for a machine, you know, to finish a part from back to front, I can go ahead and get a lot of these back sides lined up, get a lot of the material roughed out and finished, add all my, for example, if I was adding any sort of dowel pins here for any sort of locating features, you know, to help make locating easier on your fixture on your UMC or, you know, another 5-axis machine. We can go ahead and do that. Everything is done. You can run multiple work offsets. And then what I really like about Fusion is, for example, let's just say I did that to also on my main face as well, right? I've actually gone ahead and made a setup here to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and simulate this. As you can see, we're going to start roughing this out. And I've left a bunch of stock everywhere, right? Because we're not going to be finishing this part in this machine, right? We're going to be finishing this part in a different machine. So I've left a bunch of stock everywhere. And basically what I want to happen is after my programmer is done programming this on Fusion 360, my other programmer is going to go ahead and use PowerMill, right? To go ahead and finish this part out with more complex and more involved toolpaths that are available on PowerMill. I can go ahead and save this stock, right, as a mesh, as an STL file. I can go ahead and save that stock. And typically you can just basically save this onto your desktop, wherever you need to save it to. And then what I really like about it is I can go back into my design area, right? And as I've already gone ahead and done it here just to make it easier and more convenient for timing purposes. But I can say, hey, insert a mesh, bring that stock STL, that mesh body in here, add that to my part, right? And again, all of this can be quickly done just by on PowerMill, right? For example, now he'll go ahead and he'll load this stock option on PowerMill, set that as the original stock body. And then if I go back to my manufacturer, instead of me wasting now a bunch of time, now that I've already roughed everything out, I can go ahead and use this mesh body as my stock body and wait and instead of wasting a bunch of time cutting air, I know exactly where material is being left at. And now I can focus all my toolpaths more on the areas that need to be machined. So that's really the magic of where Fusion 360 can work with other softwares like PowerMill is like get everything roughed up you know, up front ahead, save that time, save some money, save some cost, and have everything kind of ready to go into your bottleneck machine, right? The same sort of procedure, like I said, can be applied to a lot of our lathe parts as well. So if you had jigs, if you had fixtures, for example, I'm going to go ahead here and quickly jump over this little chain cover that I have here, right? How many times have you had to track down somebody and be like, hey, I need soft jaws made so I can hold this part in for my second op or anything like that, right? So for the time it'll take for you to find out if your designer is free, hey, I need you to go ahead and just kind of make me some soft jaws in here. What I can do is I brought in a simple little Kurt Weiss here as a model. Again, this is all simple things that you can do just by dragging and dropping different files into Fusion 360. I went ahead and modeled up some soft jaws as well, right? As you can see, again, on here, what I've done is I've created a soft jaw feature, and I can go ahead and just kind of, you know, get rid of this so it's a little easier and faster for us to see. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay. Let's just say I want to complete this profile on this body right here, right? What I can quickly do is I can say, hey, I need to go ahead and do a quick combine feature. Say this is my target body. This is my tool body. I need to intersect that. Keep my tools. I'll hit OK. Just give Fusion 360 a couple of minutes to think about it. Go ahead and turn my body up. And now what I've basically done is I've created the soft jaw for it without having to involve my designer, without having to go ahead and find them, and quickly just by kind of clicking a bunch of surfaces here and hitting the delete key, I can go ahead and delete a lot of these faces off and kind of help. And I can also go ahead and say, hey, I want to extrude this piece down, say to an object, and say down to here. Oops, it's the profile plane, distance is to object. Click this plane right here, say I want to cut all that off, hit OK. So again, as you can see, it's a very quick and very simple process just to kind of go ahead and make everything a lot cleaner. And I would go ahead and, do the same process on this side. I'm not going to waste you guys' time with all of that. But, now I have the ability to go ahead and make these soft jaws, all while my machine is running a completely different program on a completely different part, right? But what I'm doing now is I can go ahead and within minutes just create a soft jaw. Maybe ask my buddy who's sitting right next to me and his machine's free, and I'll be like, hey, could you possibly cut up these soft jaws for me on your machine really quickly, because I'm going to need them for my second op, right? So that's really where the workflow and how we can integrate Fusion 360 into our workflow, right? And again, this is not the limit of it. I can go ahead and just kind of open things up a little bit just by creating quick little sketches. And I'm not going to do it on here just to kind of save some time. But again, direct model editing is something where Fusion 360 can really help as far as being, something for jigs and fixtures and smaller things like that, right? Again, I want to quickly just kind of touch on some of the things we talked about, for example, like the tool library and inspection, right? So for example, let's just say that you had somebody sitting right by the machine and they had to swap part soon after the first op was done, and you had to take a part out and you got to put a new part in. Now, instead of having them go ahead and try to set up a new work offset, right? What I can do is I'm just going to go ahead and turn my body back on here so we can see it. So let's just say that we were setting up our part in the soft jaws for the first op. Very quickly, I can say, hey, I need to go ahead and set up a probing work operation. Go ahead and select my probe in here. This is 60, my sample library, select OK, right? Give it a quick little feed rate. Default it to 0. Say, hey, I want to do a stock. As you can see, and I can go ahead and say how deep I need that to go. Like for example, I'll say, hey, I need to go to about 150 or so, something like that. Hit OK. So again, I have basically automated my setup so that while your operator, all he needs to do is open up the door, take the part out, put a new block in, and he can just go and hit cycle start, hit the green button, walk away. He doesn't need to wait. He or she doesn't need to wait there and try to figure out, hey, I need to re-offset this new block, right? So very quickly, you can go ahead and make all of these an automated process. Let's go ahead and simulate that. Just that was very fast. I'm just going to go ahead and slow that down so you guys can see what that looks like. So then, as you can see, we're going to automatically go ahead and have all that basically set up, ready to go. Frees up yourself, frees up the machine, and frees up the operator to go ahead and get all of that basically done and automated, right? Quickly, I just want to touch on our tool library as well, right? So like I mentioned earlier, the tool library on Fusion 360 is a collaborative tool. You can have, as you can see, I have mine enabled right here. I have cloud libraries. So for example, if I had, you can set it up with different machines, different programmers, have it set up in the most convenient way that you want your workflow to flow in, and have people collaborate and figure out exactly which tools are in which machine. And then, like I said, creating custom tools are a breeze. All I have to do is select the category of the tool that I want to create. For example, let's just say I was creating a ball end mill. Again, like I said, you can go ahead and add the description right off the website, add that product ID, so basically your part number, right? And you can also go ahead and put that product link on there with the right, HTTP address. So these are just a few of the things where Fusion 360 can really excel and really help kind of, well, I don't need to dish out more money for another seat of Power Mill, right? If my user isn't really using Power Mill at its full capacity. If they're using Power Mill just for some very quick 2D work or some very simple 3D work, when you have access to Fusion 360, it just kind of makes more sense to have them, go with this option, a much more intuitive option, right? Let's just say, for example, you have new people starting at the company. Instead of having them to sit through a lot of more complex software, for example, like FeatureCAM, software that you already own, FeatureCAM, PartMaker, and stuff like that, PowerMill, have them get ready with what your workflow is like, what sort of machining practices you follow at your company, make them all aware of that, but use Fusion 360 as your training tool, right? So this is kind of, again, like where Fusion 360 really helps, and how we can be utilized and used at your company, right? So quickly, with the last subject matter I wanted to cover here was the advanced possibilities. And we kind of talked about that even with, automating simultaneous 5-axis and part alignment. Fusion 360 does come with a lot of different extensions with a lot of different packages also. So you can add, so if you're somebody, like I said earlier, if you're someone who's going to be using Fusion 360 more for the CAD side of things, we have a lot of product development, product design extensions that you can add. So a lot of features, for example, plastic design, right? That's its own beast in itself. So Fusion 360 has a lot of possible capabilities and extensions and features that you can add onto your base Fusion 360 that'll help you automate a lot of those processes. The same thing goes for manufacturing too, right? So we were talking about things like automating. Fusion 360 has features such as automatic hole recognition, right? So if, for example, if you were a company that handled a lot of different parts and very complex parts, and for example, you had a lot of hole features or hole making features on your part, instead of having your programmer sit there and basically reprogram a lot of the things that you've already done in other similar parts, you can use things like the hole recognition feature, where you can, within a couple of clicks, go ahead and set up all of your drilling operations, right? I do have one right here. I'm just quickly going to show that so you can kind of see how that works. We're going to return back to this headlight mode here that I had earlier. Hide the stock here. Let's go. Let's see. I'll just pick this setup right here, right? And then I'm going to say drilling, hole recognition. Give it a couple of seconds here. Oh, I want to make sure that I'm on the right setup. So that's the setup I want to be on. Say hole recognition. And then as you can see, what Fusion has done is automatically found every single hole that's on that same plane that's perpendicular to the z-axis, right? It's studying those features. But let's just go one step further and say, hey, I want to involve all of the other holes on the sides as well. So I'm going to say multi-axis machining turned on. And now when I go back to my hole groups, as you can see, it's identifying a lot of other drilling holes, right? So I can go ahead and say, depending on the holes that I want to drill, depending on the holes that I want to ignore, I can go ahead and set up my hole recognition here. I'm going to quickly just hit OK, just so you can kind of see what that'll look like. And then as you can see, Fusion 360 automatically goes ahead and sets up my spot drilling and my drill holes. And again, you can set this up based off of different, and you can go ahead and edit this at any point in time as well. And you can set that up based on any sort of different tool libraries too. I have another hole recognition I made earlier. As you can see that now, instead of ignoring the side holes, we actually activate those. And if I was to do this myself and having to go ahead and select individual drilling operations for all of the individual orientated holes, it's going to be a nightmare. And the reason why I tell you that is because I've done that in the past. Now, within a fraction of the time that I used to take, and like you saw within a couple of clicks, we've gone ahead and automated this whole process, right? So again, just to kind of show you, that's kind of really why we want to use Fusion 360 hand in hand with all the other softwares that we have to make your whole machining and manufacturing and even design process a lot more streamlined, and trying to avoid a lot of the bottleneck areas that you have issues with, right? So quickly, that's kind of all the content that I had to kind of share with everybody. I'm going to open up the floor for any questions and answers. Again, like I said, feel free to go ahead and drop any sort of questions using the the Zoom Q&A feature there. Again, thanks to everybody for coming today and trying to see the value of where Fusion 360 kind of lies, and how you can use it in your process workflow.